Back everybody, my name is Tucker, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my MVP prediction for the upcoming 2020 to 21 NBA season. I made a video about this last year and I correctly predicted that Giannis would win the MVP, and I went into this really in-depth style of predicting the MVP, and I'm going to do a similar thing for this offseason, this upcoming season as well. But quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every day, all throughout the NBA offseason, so it's a great place for consistent NBA content, including any kind of prediction videos, whether they be awards or otherwise, and I'm doing a season preview on all 30 NBA teams right now. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then please subscribe. You can also leave a like rating on the video. It helps me out a ton, lets me know that you're enjoying the content, and gets the video out to more people on YouTube as well. And you can hang out with me at the various socials at the bottom of the screen. With those things said, let's talk about the MVP for the upcoming 2020 to 21 NBA season. So for me, there are a handful of really interesting candidates, and I think this is a pretty wide open MVP race, to be completely honest, this upcoming season, not only because of the special circumstances of this year and how that could impact each individual player or team, but just because I think there's a lot of really good players at the top of the league that are MVP caliber guys. So for me, there are a handful of legitimate candidates. For example, LeBron, AD, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm putting Steph Curry in there as well. He's currently one of the top guys in terms of MVP odds for this upcoming season. And then you got some outlier guys like potentially Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Kawhi Leonard, Damian Lillard, and Joel Embiid. And in last year's MVP video, again, that I correctly predicted that Giannis was going to win the MVP, I laid out kind of this framework for what NBA history this century has told us about the NBA MVP, and it went super in depth into positions and into records in terms of what different archetypes there are of potential MVP winners, and I'll briefly recover that here and apply that to this season as well. So essentially what I said in that video is there are really only a handful of ways that players win an MVP award. They're either the best player on the best team in the league. LeBron's had a few of those. They're either a huge leap in their stats, like a career year, basically. A guy that we knew was good, but then took this extra leap to become this even better player. You could apply Steph in there for either of his, or for his first MVP. You could also apply the best player on the best team for that as well. Or you could have a crazy good, like historical season, like setting records type historical season, which would be Russell Westbrook back with the Oklahoma City Thunder if we're looking at recent MVP. So there's a handful of different archetypes of MVP winners. The other things that we've learned by looking back at past MVP winners since 2000 is that, one, unless your name is LeBron James, you don't win non-consecutive MVP awards. Here's what that means. If you have already won an MVP, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and you are not the reigning MVP, which in this case would be Giannis, you don't typically win another one in NBA history unless your name is LeBron James, or at least in recent NBA history. So if you're going to be picking someone like Steph or someone like Kevin Durant, you're going a bit against that trend. Now, that's not to say that it won't happen, but in general, if you're just going off of recent NBA history, if you're trying to correctly predict the MVP, you're either picking LeBron, you're picking a guy that hasn't won it yet, or you're picking the guy that just won it, which in this case would be Giannis. And that really only excludes former MVPs like Russ, like James Harden, like Steph, that did not just win the MVP award. The other really important part of this that I think a lot of people miss out on is they try and pick this trendy MVP guy, this, kind of on the fringes player that they think is going to have a huge statistical season, and a lot of times does. But the MVP in the NBA is very correlated to team success. Russell Westbrook in 2016-17 is the only NBA MVP this century, like since 2000, to be on a team that did not have a top 2 record in their conference. Every single MVP of the last 20 years, other than Russell Westbrook that year, has led their team to a top 2 record in their respective conference. So you either need to be confident that the guy that you're picking, if you're picking someone that might not get into that top 2, you either need to be confident that they're going to be good enough to get their team into the top 2, or that you're going to be going a bit against recent history here and picking an MVP that will not lead their team to a top 2 record in their conference. Now, with those points made, let's go through the candidates themselves. So I generally cross off both AD and LeBron at this point just because they're 2 MVP caliber players, guys that are really going to figure into the race. on the same team, and they kind of steal votes and steal notoriety from each other. The counter to that would be that LeBron was actually relatively close last year against Giannis. And for what it's worth, I actually do think that AD isn't a bad pick at all this year. This feels like a situation where LeBron could like really help AD win the MVP, right? And be even more assist oriented this regular season, really boost up AD's numbers. They could easily be the top seed in the Western Conference. And I could absolutely see Anthony Davis winning the MVP this season. Now, for LeBron, I just don't see it anymore. It would have to be a really narrative-based thing. He's obviously still outstanding. The statistics are still incredible. But I think that at a certain point, people get a little bit fatigued. They get a little bit bored about voting for LeBron. And so I would actually place Anthony Davis in my own personal rankings as the second most likely player in the entire league to win the MVP this upcoming season. He's not my actual prediction, but I would not be surprised in any way if Anthony Davis ended up winning the MVP this season. Some other candidates here. Someone like Nikola Jokic gets mentioned each and every year. I'm going to cross him off for a handful of reasons. One, it's possible the Nuggets are a little bit worse this year than they were last year, given the fact that Jeremy Grant is gone. Unless Michael Porter Jr. really steps up this season, which is certainly a possibility, I think from a record standpoint, they're going to be slightly worse, which in general, players that win the MVP, their records go up. They don't go down from the year before. And also, the MVP has not been kind in recent years to big guys unless you're counting Giannis as a big. So for me, I'm going to cross Jokic off there. There's a lot of outlier guys here as well that are really interesting. You can mention Steph here as maybe a potential favorite. Again, odds-wise, he kind of is. The injury stuff scares me a little bit with him. I don't feel confident that he's going to be able to play close to the full 72 games this year. That could be the case for every player, by the way. But just injury-wise, I'm a little bit nervous about Steph, so I'm going to cross him off. In terms of the other outlier guys, I think Jason Tatum, from an odds standpoint, is a really interesting player to take a look at. I think could pretty easily lead that Boston team to a top 2 seed in the East and could kind of start to get that narrative vote of a guy that, is new and is trendy and up and coming, right? Someone like Kawhi, if the Clippers have a really good year, could certainly be a part of this. And Embiid as well, who's basically as talented as any player in the entire league. And if he has a really good season, could certainly challenge for the MVP. But for me personally, I'm going to go a bit against some of my own analysis here, and I'm going to pick Luka Doncic as the MVP this upcoming season because he feels like the guy this year, right? Like he feels like everything is kind of moving in the correct direction for him. He's been incredible, out of this world in his first 2 seasons, and that might actually go a bit against him because we probably won't see this huge leap statistically from Luka from last year to this upcoming season, and that would probably help his case if he was, closer to like 20 points per game last year and then goes up to near 30 this year. That huge leap would probably help him. But from a narrative standpoint, the Mavs should be good. I wouldn't be surprised to see them, kind of push for that top 5 seed in the Western Conference, which goes a bit against what I was saying earlier. So I'll talk about that in a second. And then statistically, he's going to be incredible. And people just love watching this guy play. There's clearly momentum around Luka Doncic being the MVP this upcoming season. And one guy I didn't mention at this point, by the way, in the candidates is Giannis. I think, again, people are just a little bit bored now at this point. I don't think he's going to win 3 MVPs in a row, despite the fact that his stats are probably going to be out of this world. I think at a certain point, whether you're looking at James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Giannis, and then LeBron to a certain extent, people just get a little bit bored of voting for the same guys. They're looking for something new, something fresh. And I think Luka is that something fresh this season. Now, I think it's unlikely, and we'll get to this when I talk about the Mavs season preview video, I think it's unlikely that the Mavs end up in that top 2 range in the standings in the Western Conference, just because this conference is so tough this season, which again goes a bit against some of the things that I was saying earlier in the video, where in general you want to make sure you're picking a guy that you feel confident can get in the top 2 in their respective conference. The reason why I'm making a bit of an exception here for Luka is because of all the narrative-based stuff that I was talking about, with people just kind of being ready for Luka to be the MVP. And this is going to be such a tough Western Conference that I think people can grade a little bit on a curve this upcoming season, to where if the Mavs are like the 4th seed in the West, that almost counts as like a top 2 seed because it's going to be such a tough conference. They'll probably only be, if they are 4, there'll probably only be a handful of games out of the 2 spot anyway. And if he's really carrying that roster and averaging like 30, 9 assists and 8 rebounds, then I don't really see how anybody else could win it, given the momentum, given the narrative-based stuff. I think Luka is a really good pick for MVP this season, and that is going to be my personal prediction. I'm really interested to see what you guys have to say in terms of who you think will win the MVP and why this season. I think there's a lot of really interesting candidates, but for me personally, I'm going to go with Luka. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, including any of my season preview videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.